We got about one more minute. We'll go ahead and get started on that. Hey, good afternoon. We'll go ahead and get started. It's 1900, and I always want to start on time. But I want to welcome you to the quarterly professional development session. Tonight we have an outstanding speaker that's coming up. Beth, you can go ahead and bring the slides up. But on behalf of the Military Police Regiment Association, we've been doing these quarterly professional development sessions over the last couple of years. And tonight I am very, very excited. I got a good presentation presenter, Mike Miglera. He's going to do the presentation tonight. And I can tell you that we have the right guy. This is our second professional development series focused on military transition to the civilian sector. And Mike reached out to me probably about 7, 8 months ago, him and Mike True, in reference to bringing him on to do a presentation. But tonight, he's going to give you pretty much a candid view of what success looked like. And we always try to bring in people that's very, very successful in the military sector, along with the military sector, to come in for these presentations. And I think we're going to hit a home run tonight. But Mike Curlin right now is acting deputy director and chief operation officer for the U.S. Selective Service. So he has all the credentials to come in and tell you how to be successful. So Mike, I want to tell you thanks again on behalf of the MPRA for coming in, conducting this professional development session. But over the last 7 months, it's been a great opportunity to get a chance to know you. You come from a great reputation in the MP Corps as a retired colonel. And I would tell you over the last 7 months, man, I can tell you I've created a great friendship with you. So we're looking forward to it. So Beth, you can go ahead and go to the next slide, please. These sessions are basically educational, professional development sessions to connect with other MPs. I think tonight we probably have a couple of people on other than MPs that I talked to, a couple of my mentees that may be on tonight. And also we conduct these sessions every quarter. And some of the sessions we had personnel that come on here and kind of talk about leadership, organization, culture. General Albright gave a great presentation on the state of the MP regiment. We had a great presenter, two of them that came in and talked about VA benefits. And tonight we're going to focus on transition. Next slide, please. This is some protocols. Attendees cannot turn on their cameras. Will be muted throughout the seminar. The only people that you're going to see during the webinar are the members of the MPRA that sits on the mentorship board. If you have a question, raise your hand or either put it in the chat, and we will stop Mike throughout. If you got a question that come up, I get a good pause and we can ask him that question. All the questions will be answered. If they don't be answered during the session, and we'll make sure that we send it out on an email, all the participants and all the people that dial in, and make sure we get those questions answered for you. Okay. And this webinar will be recorded. So at this time, without further ado, I go ahead and turn it over to the man of the hour. Go ahead, Mike.
Hey, Joe. Thanks. I appreciate the opportunity, and I appreciate MPRA asking us to do this. So for the folks in attendance, so let's do this. Imagine Friday is your last day in uniform. You have your retirement ceremony or your transition ceremony, you get your award, you walk out the door, and Monday is the day you transition. Think about what that looks like. So the intent for tonight is to give you some tools to put in your kit bag to make that a reality, right? So a couple of things I ask you to think about as we go through tonight and as you put in your kit bag: preparation, translation, and networking. All right, we'll talk about those three things throughout the briefing. So good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining MPRA's Continued Learning Education, focusing on career transition series. My name is Michael Migliere. I'm a retired MP, retired just a little over 16 years ago. And I've been working as a GS employee since then. I currently serve as like Gerald said, with the Selective Service System. Worked at Fort Leonard Wood for a while when I got out of the Army. Through networking, a boss brought me to DC to work at the Department of Veterans Affairs. I did that for about 5 years, so happy to discuss some of those programs if you'd like to talk about those offline. And then I transitioned from there, and I was the director of operations at Arlington National Cemetery for a couple of years before I came here. So very fortunate, very blessed. Not only do you have great jobs in the Army and great bosses in the Army, but it's transitioned into the civilian world. So this briefing is really set up for folks that are transitioning after an initial enlistment, mid-career, and then folks that retire. So we got something for everybody. But all of you, though, your specific challenges will differ based on where you fall. I was pretty fortunate with my transition. I had great mentors along the way that said you can't start soon enough. So we'll talk about networking as we go through here, but I wouldn't be in the DC area if it wasn't through networking from folks that I worked for 20 years before. And then we'll talk a little bit about that. You'll see a stat later on that says 70% of jobs come from people that you know from networking. We'll cover about 6 critical waypoints, talk about transitions, stories, and then we'll talk a little bit about the major changes in federal hiring. But I like to leave you with this as we get out the gate: is transition is a process, not an event. And it really starts 24 to 18 months before you separate. And it'll continue for a year to 2 or 3 years after you're done. All right, Beth, next slide, please. Yeah, so obligatory slide, selective service system. Yep, we're the draft. We're an independent federal agency reporting directly to the White House, and our job is to provide manpower to DOD in the event of a national emergency. Not just a war, it could be something else. And we do that all for $31 million. So there's a bumper sticker we have that says, we're a cheap insurance policy for the nation to be able to provide manpower. We too were part of this big downsizing. In May, we had 134 employees. Our target number by 1 October 2026, fiscal year 27, is 98. With some major reorganization, we're going to be able to do that. Our headquarters is here in Virginia. We have 4 directorates, the normal ones: IT, operations, support services, and public and intergovernmental affairs. That's my day job. I've just been elevated while we don't have any political appointees. Half of our agencies in Northern Illinois, or North Chicago and Illinois, where our data management center, our call center, and our mail center is there. We recently just processed our 100 millionth registrant since President Carter reactivated us back in 1980. And then we're really excited about some legislation we have in the House version of the NDAA. It's not in the Senate version yet, but we think it'll get there, and it'll make registration automatic for young men, so they don't have to go do that anymore. So we're real excited about that. A little bit about the selective service system. Felt obligated to throw that in there with who we are, what we do here at selective service. All right, Beth, next slide, please. So here's what we're going to cover today. We structured this to give maximum value regardless of where you are, separating after 4, 15, or retiring. We'll talk a little bit about the landscape, the reality check with what the actual data about what's happening to transitioning service members, what went on at 24 and 25, and then we'll break down the different separation types, timelines, and we'll talk about the waypoints. The way we broke down the waypoints is ranked on how much veterans struggle with them. This is all data that we've collected from 24 and 25. We'll spend most of the time talking about the critical waypoints. That's really where the meat of the briefing is. We'll share some stories about successful, moderately successful, and not really successful transitions. Then we'll talk a little bit about hiring changes, and then at the end we've got a litany of resources and websites where you can go to check out what's going on and where you can get some help. Just a little bit more background. I'm working on my a degree in counseling and community care, and my thesis is transitioning veterans. So this was really timely. So you'll see a little bit of academia at the very end of the briefing with APA style references where we got the data. So put that in there. It may be useful to you as well. All right, next slide, Beth, please. So let's level set what we're facing, in 24 and 25. So almost 250,000 service members transition and leave the military every year. So depends what size of the division, 15, 16 divisions. 81% are leaving before reaching retirement. So that means only 19% are the ones staying until retirement. So there's different needs for everybody. One of the things, this is all empirical data, right? So for those separating early, young veterans age 18 to 24 face a 3% higher unemployment rate compared to their civilian peers. And then one of the data points that we found that was pretty shocking, it said 60% of all veterans, regardless of time of service, are underemployed or unemployed. And we think most of those numbers, based on what we've read, is underemployed, not so much unemployed. It's not because they lack the skills, but because of military experience isn't properly understood by employers. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. And if you remember at the beginning, I talked about how do we translate who we are and what we do to corporate America. But here's the good news for everybody. The difference between those who thrive and those who struggle isn't about luck, rank, years of service. It's all preparation and timing. Those who start their planning 24 months out, 18 months out, have shown a propensity to land on their feet as opposed to those who wait till 90 days, regardless of whether they're 4 years, 15 years, or 20 years. The principle we're going to cover today apply to everyone, and the specific programs, financial considerations will vary based on your situation, and we'll point those out as we go. So we talked about 30 to 32% of transitions are first-term separations. So think about that group if you're in there. You don't have a retirement, right? You may have some VA disability, but you're coming out of the gate with not a lot, potentially not a lot to transition with, like the folks that are retiring after 20 years. So your focus ought to be onward to opportunity, skill bridge programs, network. You hear me talk about filing a VA claim and being geographically flexible. So let me pause right there for a second. I'll weave in the VA claim piece in quite often, right? It's important that you do that. It's not about 100% rating. It's about getting your VA rating established, because there are some hiring eligibilities that you have with a VA rating. At 30%, you become there are more eligibilities for you if you're 30% or higher. Plus, if you were hurt in the military, go see the VA, get it documented now. We far too often hear stories of folks waiting 15, 20 years to go do that. And there's a program in place now. It's benefits delivery at discharge, where you can start that earlier. Unlike guys like me, we had to wait till we were done, and then we had to wait that 12, 15, 18 months for our retirement. Mid-career separations, that's about half of the transitions. So if you're medically retired, different story. You got a little bit of retirement. You may not. You're likely to have a family, mortgage, established life. You have significant experience, so rely heavy on that, but you may not have retirement. Relocation is harder with kids in school, spouse, or job. So your focus ought to be understanding your true financial requirements, do the VA thing, managing family expectation, and not undervaluing your experience. The corporate America, civilian world wants veterans for the leadership, but we don't always do a really good job explaining what our talents are. I'll give you a couple of vignettes later on as we get through this. Career retirees, very small part, 20% of the transition are retirees. So what's good about you? You get 40 to 50% of your base pay for life. That's a huge advantage. One of the things that we've seen through statistics is struggle with identity loss more than the other groups. Sometimes have a potential for unrealistic expectations about the second career when it comes to walking in the door as a GS, fill in the blank, or an SES, or six-figure jobs. You have a little bit more complexity with spouse, career, restarts, potentially college-age kids, and aging parents. While you have the financial aid to be you have financial buffer to be strategic. Use that wisely. So the focus that we've seen where success for this group of folks getting out or retiring is managing their expectation, filing the VA claim, total compensation, and thinking about what their identity and their purpose and work. I just throw this up. My dad retired after 23 years, Vietnam veteran. He said the hardest thing that he had to do waking up every morning was figuring out what to put on. So he said, I'll fix that. He went and worked for the sheriff's department. So they had a uniform to wear. So just something to think about that we may think is not a big deal or not is not a thing. It is. So we'll talk about some of those things as we move forward. If there aren't any questions, we can move forward. Next slide, Beth. Yeah, so we'll get into the navigating the transition. You can't start early enough. 24 months out, you're developing your vision and foundation. One of the biggest pieces of advice a mentor told me was network, network, network. Let people know what your plans are. The sooner you do that, the better off you are. Because people want to help you, right? If you're good and you've got a boss that you work for that's doing something or may know somebody, they're going to network for you. So do that networking. He said the one thing LinkedIn wasn't a big thing back then, but as we've talked over the last almost 2 decades, he goes, my biggest challenge with folks is getting a LinkedIn request for somebody I haven't talked to in 12 years, sending me a LinkedIn request for one reason only. They want me to help them get a job. So there's nothing wrong with reaching out to folks and asking for advice, but do that 2 years out. People want to help you. And I just had this conversation with my oldest son. I said, you're very competitive. You're very qualified. Don't think that the folks that want to hire you are just doing you a favor. Your track record speaks for yourself. They're not going to hire people that aren't going to make their organization better. And doggone it, they sure want to hire people that they know have a proven record, right? So you don't have that one of those things where you're trying to sniff around what's this person really like? They already know who you are. So it's a win-win situation for everybody. But I can't stress enough, network, network, network. Let people know. You may not end up working for your old boss or somebody that you know, but they may know somebody who knows somebody that's looking for a job, and that can help you out. So I just paid political or a PSA, not a paid political announcement. So attend TAP. But when you attend TAP, what we've seen is it's the level of engagement at TAP. If you go to check the box and you're there, I did it, and you're kind of paying attention, that's cool. But be engaged. Be engaged. Define your post-service goals. Where do you want to live? What industry? What salary do you need? Request your veterans of your verification of military education and training. Think about your second career. It's not just your next job. And then start financial planning that includes retirement pay in that equation. 12 to 15 months out. This is the challenging one, right? So drafting your resume. We've gone from this monster of 12, 15 pages, 7 pages with USA Jobs. It's 2 pages now, right? You don't think it's hard to just write 2 pages. It's incredibly difficult taking all the stuff that you've done to put it in 2 years. But there are plenty of organizations out there that can help you out with that. 9 to 12 months out, that's your window to do your benefits delivery at discharge. 3 to 9 months out, that's your final prep. Things that you wouldn't think about: separation paperwork, housing, civilian healthcare, schools. Can't stress this enough. Mock interviews. There are plenty of folks that I know that have applied for jobs that were maybe a little outside the window to accept it if they were to get it, but they were doing the interviews just to get the experience. We think we got a big S on our chest and we can do these things easily. It's a whole different ballgame when you're on the business end of being interviewed. We've all been on hiring panels, but get that practice. TAP will do that for you. There's some other organizations out there that will run mock interviews for you guys as well. Let's see, where are we at here? Complete your out processing, update all your paperwork stuff. Make sure you have that dress right dress and ready to go. I think if I were to say for all the groups is file your disability claim when you get that BDD window. That's so incredibly important. Then you put that behind you. Okay, we'll talk a little bit more about VA later on. All right, next slide, Beth. All right, waypoints. Based on the research that we've done, here are the 6 critical waypoints ranked by how much veterans struggle with them. And these apply to everyone, though the intensity varies, right? And number 1 is resume and employment. First termers struggle because they have limited experience. Mid-career and retirees struggle because they have challenges translating their experience into civilian terms. So last week I was with a bunch of buddies. We're playing golf, and a good friend of mine made the comment. He was doing the corporate tour with CFOs and CEOs, and he had this great resume of all the stuff that he did. And the hiring managers were like, "Yeah, we see that, but what do you do? What can you do for us?" Right? So so he had a little bit of a challenge trying to translate that into their language. And he started talking about logistics, chief of staff functions, operations, things that they would understand. But it's translating, like we talked at the beginning, one of the three things: preparation, translation, and networking. How do we get those resumes to speak the civilian world? And there are plenty of organizations, and you have a list of those that can help you out with it. Financial management, it's critical for everybody, especially if those that aren't having retirement pay. Number three, mental wellness and identity. Probably don't, I was floored when I read this. It hits retirees the hardest. 20 plus years of identity, but it affects everyone. We'll talk a little bit more healthcare, VA, housing relocation. Just lost my slide. There we go. VA benefits, credentials, and education. And then we'll cover specific actions and programs for each waypoint with call outs for most critical for each group. All right, next slide, Beth. Yeah, so this is where everyone struggles, but for different reasons. What's the universal problem? Like, it's kind of what we talked about. Your military job just doesn't translate automatically. Squad leader, I'm going to be very generic. Squad leader doesn't mean anything to human resources. Convoy operation sounds very military specific. CHOPS, what does that mean to HR? Now, they understand logistician, they understand information technology, they understand security, they understand chief of staff. So that's what we've got to do to help translate our resume into corporate speak. Like we talked about, more than 60% of veterans are underemployed not because they lack the skills again, but we have challenges communicating to civilian employers what it is we do. Right. So this is when we're gonna request your VMET. It shows your civilian education. Get help with your resumes. Tons of organizations out there that'll help you with the resume. And I think the speaker after me, the next group has been working this the other way, now going from a longer resume now down to a shorter resume. So think about, as you translate what you've done, quantify, qualify numbers, dollars, percentages. And if you can talk about where you save money and increased efficiencies, that's always good. So skill bridge, first termers, onward opportunity, a lot of great programs that are out there for free, hiring for heroes, LinkedIn for veterans. Great program, LinkedIn Premium for a year. Start building your network now before you need a job. So you first termers, less experience, so certifications are more critical. Mid-career, you have a significant experience, but must translate that carefully. And the risks of overvaluing your military role. Make them understand what it is you did, and focus on leadership, project management, crisis management. People understand those things. Risk management, crisis management are always words that people understand. And then retirees. One of my best friends on the planet, he and I had a long discussion before he retired, and we were talking about another guy that we had worked with who walked out the door. And this is what he said. He goes, "I'm not accepting a job unless I'm a SES or GS-15 step 10. That guy went about 4 or 5 years without getting he struggled. So the conversation my buddy and I had was expectations, right? Walk out the door. The first job you have isn't going to be more than likely the job your be all end all job, but set your level of expectation and be realistic. And a lot of that has to do with the calculations of how much money do you need to make based on where you're living and what are your bills, right? So excuse me, expectation management when you walk out the door. An 06 doesn't mean you walk out the door as a GS-15. Master Sergeant doesn't mean you walk out the door as a GS-13 or 14. Just, there are folks running around without degrees, without 20 years in the military that are doing this. So I just ask you to, take a step back and have that level of expectation. So your level of expectation here, and this is what happens. That's when conflict results. So a couple of things I ask you to think about. Critical actions for everybody. Translate everything, military terms to civilian equivalents. Quantify your achievements, numbers to prove impact. Network strategically. And 70% of jobs come from relationships, not from applications. We've all heard the elevator speech. Nail that. Nail it till you're sick and tired of hearing yourself say it, because you never know when you're going to get an opportunity. You could be on the golf course, you could be grabbing lunch with somebody and hear somebody talk about something, and then you never know when you're going to get an opportunity to give your elevator pitch or sell yourself, whatever term you want to use. And then Skill Bridge. Skill Bridge is so cool. We're trying to get Skill Bridge. We're trying to get involved in, get on the list for Skill Bridge or an internship with DoD here at Selected Service. Hell, why wouldn't we want to have that with the talent pool that's out there? So bottom line is start early, translate skills, use the free programs, network relentlessly. Whether you're getting out after 4 years or 24 years, these are the principles that apply. So you'll hear me say about networking. Again, the more you talk to people, the more people you get involved in your circle, expand your circle. People want to help. People help them, and it's going to be your turn. And as leaders, one of the things to think about as we're going through these slides is put in the back of your mind, what can you take away from this to help your folks that are leaving after that 80% of leaving prior to retirement. So just something to think about. Number 2, next slide. Thanks, Beth. This is where differences between separation types matter most. So you've got different scenarios. First enlistment, they're out the door, no retirement. Mid-career, potentially no retirement, maybe a medical retirement. And then retirees have that buffer of a retirement. That's my slide here. So this is an opportunity for you to use your military compensation calculator to understand exactly what you're getting. Found that a great ton of veterans didn't realize what their retirement pay was going to be, right? We get this BAH, BAS base pay, which is up here. And then when they retire, they, run it through the Googleator and they come up with this number and they have the OS syndrome. Oh, shoot. I thought I was going to get more than that. So it's important to take a look at that early on to help you manage expectations on what you need to live. And then again, we talk about budgets from the time we're kids, right? Create a comprehensive civilian budget, housing, BAH, house, healthcare costs, and all your taxable income. And then start exercising that before you get out. Retirees use the DFAST retirement calculator. That's fantastic. Understand your TRICARE options. It's not free anymore. So I guess for the first termers, you're starting a little bit from ground zero. You're going back into the civilian world. VA disability, you may have some of that. Be geographically flexible. Mid-career, your salary needs may be higher because you don't have that retirement. Retirees, you have the cushion of retirement, but think total compensation. Retirement plus salary plus whatever else you might get. Don't just look at the job salary alone and think it's too low. So what do you need to live on? Financial stress we've seen cause huge challenges to transition. So do the math now, build a buffer, be realistic about what you need to live on, especially that first job coming out. All right, next slide. Yeah, this is one that veterans don't talk about enough until it becomes a crisis. Fascinated when we were doing some studies on this, right? So it's our identity, 20 plus years for those of us that retired, that's our adult life was spent in uniform with people like us. So it's not just your job, it's your identity, it's your mission, your community, it's the structure of your entire life. When you take the uniform off, you're not changing jobs. You could potentially be in your mind losing a sense of purpose and mission, maybe a little bit of a status, a community of people who understand you, the structure that's defined every day of your adult life, and the feeling that what you do matters. One veteran in a recent study said it perfectly. He said, the military gave me an identity, and there was never a need to self-identify. He said, I found it challenging to establish who I was without the military, right? But he identified that. So it's important for us to at least be cognizant of what's going on when we transition. Another staggering stat was the suicide rate within the first year of separation is 2.5 times higher than the active duty population. So let me say that again, 2.5 times higher. This is real, serious. So not just for you, but for the folks that you have under your care that are leaving. Just think about that. I mean, we've been talking about veteran suicide for a long time, and perhaps we don't talk about it enough. First termers, you joined the military 18 to 22. It's been your entire adult identity. You never had a civilian adult life. So the structure is going to hit you hard. Mid-career, 10 to 15 years, it's the 10 to 15 years of your core adult identity. Potentially you could be leaving. What we've seen is the questions that mid-career people ask is, am I leaving? Am I making the right decision? And retirees, your whole life. It's not what you did, it's who you are. Walking in a room where, when you transition, walking in a room where it doesn't matter who you are, what you were beforehand. And for some folks, that's causes a psychological burden. And I won't go through all of them here, but there's plenty of resources here for everyone to look at if you need it. They've got a great mental wellness module in the TAP program. I highly encourage you to be engaged in that one. Be engaged, ask for help before you need it, and then for the folks in your charge, make sure you're looking out for them as well as they transition. This waypoint is too important to ignore. Mental health is not a weakness issue; it's a transition reality. All right, so use your resources accordingly. All right, that's not bad. Yeah, so what we hear from veterans, one of them, and I worked at the VA for 5 years. It is this is the Rubik's Cube of transitioning when it comes to the VA system. So great program now, the benefits of delivery of discharge. Highly encourage folks to use that. There's a window for it, 90 to 180 days. Do that, copy your records, and be thorough. Be thorough when you do that. And this is really for everybody. Do all your exams before you separate, make your appointments, get all this done beforehand, because you're going to get overcome by events afterwards. Yeah, there's a monetary component to it with disability. Yeah, I got all that. More important is to get your medical records into the VA, get them triaged, get your disability rating, get everything annotated. And then use all the programs that they have. File for healthcare enrollment, do your once a year check at the VA. I guess I'll share this with you. Copy all medical records, document everything. If you need buddy statements, you can do that. File your BDD 90 to 180 days out. Filing correctly and on time filing correctly on time will get you through that gate before you retire, right? And I'll just tell you, there are some great veteran service organizations out there that'll do this for you for free, right? There's 18 million veterans that the VA takes care of, right? So you hear stories, I didn't get this, I didn't get that. Please take that with a grain of salt. If you have 1% of 18 million, that's a lot of people, right? So if it's only 1% that are not being taken care of the way they think, but I highly encourage you, talk to a VSO, give me a call, we can link you in. Like, I don't profess to know all the answers, but I can definitely link you up with the folks who can find you the folks that can get you the answers. These VSOs have veteran service representatives that are trained to do this for you for free. So take that route first, right? I don't recommend anybody pay for a service that has been tried and true for a bunch of years. So healthcare, VA benefits, TRICARE, look at all that, VA. What I continue to hear is the doctors in VA are great. So that's kind of the stat. So happy to talk to anybody about that offline if you'd like. But yeah, do this. It's a benefit that you've earned. So make sure you take advantage of it. Next slide, please, Beth. Yeah, this is always a fun one. So where you choose to live can make or break your transition. Without your BAH, you're suddenly paying market rate rent or mortgage. You need to find new schools, spouse needs to find employment, rebuilding your entire support network from scratch. Here's where we found veterans make some mistakes. They move to a location because it's nice, because they have family there, without taking into consideration, are there any jobs that are in their field that they want to do. So you don't have BH anymore, so you have to figure out where you want to live. First termers, you guys are more mobile. Take advantage of that. Mid-career, a little bit different, like we talked about, family, kids, schools. You may already own a house. Spouse has employment, may not be as mobile. Location decisions are complex and affect everyone. And then retirees, you're the least mobile. 20 plus years of PCS move. Your family wants to settle. Kids may be in high school or college. Spouse wants stability. May have aging parents. This is likely your last move to choose wisely. So when I retired, I told my oldest son, I'm going to stay. I'm going to retire so you can finish high school in the same place, right? So that shut doors for anything outside of where I was at. So, but that was a deliberate decision on our family's part to say, okay, we're going to stay here. So I got to find a job within this metropolitan area. So, sometimes when doors shut, it makes the decision just a little bit easier. But that was a decision that we made. And then after his freshman year of college, it was jump ball, and then we ended up out here on the East Coast. So consider these things as you consider factors in your priority order. Job market, cost of living, family needs, veteran community, state benefits. Highly encourage you to look at state benefits because that's going to save money, thousands of dollars annually. Some states have no state income tax. Many states exempt military retirement from state income. Some offer property exemptions for disabled veterans. So it's good for you to research that before you make your final difference, because it'll make a difference in your financial end game. And we got some references for you is there as well. VA home loan, again, when you get about a year out, narrow down to 3 to 5 locations. Again, first termers, you're way more mobile. Mid-career, balance complexity carefully, job, family. And then retirees, you probably want to settle after 20 years. Choose this strategically. It may or may not be your last move. All right, next slide. Yeah, so here's what we found was comment we heard resonate routinely was, man, why did I get a bunch of these degrees and credentials? It's not degrees because it's not what these organizations were looking for. He said, so if I could do it over again, I would focus on credentials that employees in my target field actually wanted. Degrees are great. You can go back and get those later on if you need to. But what is it you need to get the job? And this, really for the first termers and the second ones, which is the credentials. And there's a ton of them out there that are free. Onward Opportunity, 100% free. They offer transitioning service members, veterans, and spouses. Technology, project management, sales, business. First termers, hey, these credentials could make you immediately employable. Skill Bridge, we talked about that earlier. Can't beat that drum enough. Heard nothing but great things about it. Kind of wish I had that when I was transitioning. And the amount that I think they fund up to $4,000 a year for assistance. and for MPs, the certified protection professional, physical security professionals, and then if you decide you want to do something different, there's a ton of technology and project management credentials that are out there. And then, of course, you got your GI Bill if you choose to use that. So you see at the bottom here, there's a bunch of different ways to set the conditions for success with credentials and education. But bottom line is, if you're looking for a job, find out what the credentials are, go get those. Next slide. Ooh. Spend just a little bit of time on this. We'll call them veteran A, B, and C. As you can look on here at the very bottom, you can see the key is, doesn't matter how much time in service you had, how much, the difference in all of these is preparation, right? Started 18 months out, started 12 months out, started 12 months out. The sooner you start out and the more engaged you are in the programs, the better off you're going to be. Like veteran B went to TAP, but did okay. Veteran C went to TAP, checked the box, right? Veteran A, 12 years, did all the networking, walked out the door, thriving. So the difference, research shows 65% of veterans don't feel fully transitioned until 3 years after service. Veteran A is, even veteran A is still adjusting 2 years later, but is adjusting from a position of strength, job, income, healthcare, secured. Veteran C is about adjusting from survival mode and still surviving. So just something to think about as you transition. Preparation, network. Okay, so those are things that I'd like you to remember as we leave, as we part ways tonight. Next slide, please. Yeah, so a bunch of changes. All right, so we're building the plane as we're flying it here. So if you're considering federal employment, and many MPs do, major changes took place in calendar year 25, FY26, effective 1 October. Complete overhaul of the federal hiring process. It is a monster. We've been able to hire folks in different organizations in 120 days, 90 days, but the average across the federal government is 6 to 9 months. They're trying to get that to under 80 days, right? So there's no more mark yourself as an expert anymore. They're doing away with that. Really, there was no advantage. Try to get under 80 days from application to job offer, right? 80 days compared to the 6 to 9 months. So if you were applying January, you're back in August. How many people have found other jobs by then, right? Here in the National Capital Region, man, as soon as we would get a cert list, man, we're banging away at it because those folks are looking for multiple jobs. So if you don't get on it quickly, they're probably going to go somewhere else. So they got essay questions now for GS5 and above. You guys have probably read all about that. A couple of good things that they're doing. It's called the rule of many versus the rule of three. A lot of organizations would take the scores and all the hiring manager would get is the top 3 candidates. Well, if they all manage expert, and then you're only going to get what people say. Now it's the rule of many. So you could get, hey, give me the entire list, or give me the top 50 people on this list of 100. So that means your assessment score matters more than anything else. And that'll tie into your VA disability again later on. Federal hiring is changing. Full compliance, we'll have that in effect by March of 2026. So it's happening now, not in the distant future. And I think probably by the time folks on this call are transitioning, we'll have most of the bugs worked out. And we're still on a hiring freeze with some exceptions. But like I said earlier, this is a plane we're flying as we're building it. So, but from a hiring manager, we think these are good things, and we really think they're good for veterans. And I'll talk a little bit about that more on the next slide. Yeah, so it's a good thing for veterans. So we'll show you the advantages. First and most importantly, veterans' preference remains strong, maybe even stronger than before. So you have if you're not, I'm sure most folks here, you've been around a long time, the the 5-point preference, 10-point preference, or the 30-point or higher disabled preference. That's the most powerful authority that you have if you're 30% disabled, because you can be hired hired non-competitively from GS5 to GS15. So if you have the opportunity to use that authority, use that. It's incredibly powerful. I know a ton of folks that were brought in under that VA for vets or the disability rules. But the 5 and the 10-point, like we talked about the scores, if you scored 72 on your assessment, but you're a 10-point preference veteran, now you've gone to 82. Where at 72, you might have been on the cut or right at it or below it, and you might not have got an interview. Now you're at 82. More than likely, you'll get an interview. So it's very important to take advantage of those. Some of the things they're talking about with the direct hire, definitely criminal investigators, 1811 series from GS12 to GS15. Agencies can hire you faster with less bureaucracies. That's a direct path for MPs with investigative experience. And then cybersecurity positions at the 2210 level. We at our agency were able to get an exception to policy to hire an ISSO, GS14 ISSO. So we're 1 for 1 on the exceptions, but it's a direct hire for us as well. So bottom line, skills-based hiring benefits for veterans. You have hands-on practical experience. Veterans' preference is strong and transparent. Direct hire authorities extend your advantages through 2028. Federal employment remains a strong option for transitioning military. Use your advantages. And I'll go back to that slide earlier where we talked about, let's face it, as we transition, we're transitioning with 200,000 people that are transitioning. That doesn't include all the civilian workforce that's transitioning as well. So that's part of the competition that we're engaged with. All right, next slide. So I'll summarize these. These are the 10 key takeaways, and this applies to everyone in the room, whether you're separating after 4 years or after 24 years. My old boss said, he goes, transition is a journey. It's not an event. It's a process. It's not an event. Start 24 months out. Timing separates success from struggle. Get out there, file your VA claims, use the programs that are free, ask for help before you need it. I'm going to come back to number 5. 6 is important. Translate what your military resumes say. I mean, you can use all of the AI things you want. It'll help you out. But translation. Mental health, keep that up here. Network. Can't stress that enough. The only job that I've gotten post-military where I didn't know anybody was this job here, right? I mean, I was networked into the job at the VA, and the job I had there, I worked very closely with Arlington National Cemetery. They had an opening. I got a call. I wasn't really interested in going there. Got a little pressure, so went in, interviewed, but I was already networked there. And then when I came here, this was the anomaly. So it goes back to 70% of jobs are from networking. And none of those cats at the cemetery I had worked with before. It was just the relationship that I had with them, with my position with the job I had at the VA. And then take notes, share it, pay it forward, right? Take notes for the folks that work for you before you transition. Share everything you possibly can. Nothing's better. Billy Joel's got a great line in his song that says, mistakes are the only thing we can truly call our own. We all like learning from other people's mistakes, but we learn the most from our own. But don't just share all the good things that happen with you. Share the things that maybe didn't go well, so other folks then don't have to go through that same pain, and then just pay it forward. Hopefully in 15 years you guys are doing this for folks that probably never even knew who the hell you were, but you can help them with the litany of experience and that you've had walking this patrol. You're not the first one. You're not going to be the last one. So your takeaway, pick an action, pick one, and do it this week. So take one of those 10 and jump on it. And before I turn it over back to you, so please, they'll share my email. both my personal and my work email. Happy to talk to anybody via email. Just let me know or text. Like I said, I had a bunch of people take care of me as I was transitioning. It's the only way we make it better is make it better for the folks following us. So with that, Gerald, back over to you.
Hey, Mike, standing briefing. I didn't really see any questions that came up throughout the presentation. But Mike, I want to ask you a question from my side of the house. I've talked to a couple of officers today that are transitioning. And the day and time and environment that we have right now, the job market is not looking good. Can you talk a little bit about the how you dealt with the mental health piece of it as well? Because that's something I try to talk to the officers today and kind of talk to them about it as well. Because sometimes you can get it kind of in a bad space, with the job market as being the way it is right now. How did you maneuver that piece when you got out of the military until you transitioned to the civilian sector?
Yeah, so great question. And like we talked about, mental health's tough, So
Mm-hmm.
people would say this may be cliche, but you gotta continue to do the things that kept you grounded, right? PT is huge, right? Not only mentally, not only physically, but mentally, right? You gotta stay active, you gotta stay involved, you can't turn into a hermit, right? And we are also triple type A personalities that the first time you get told no, you get crushed, right? That's fine. Okay, how many times accept that no and move on, right? No, it's not personal, right? I mean, everybody gets these top block OERs, NCOERs. Um, the landscape has changed. Never give up, right? So continue to work hard. Look, I have not met anybody who truly wanted to work who couldn't find a job in the last 15 years. Now, it may not be the job they wanted, but you got to set the conditions for where you want to be. What do I need to do to provide for my family? Heck, I don't care what anybody else thinks. If I needed to hand out towels at the gym to do that, I'd have handed out towels. And I don't think folks are doing that. But I guess, Joe, the biggest thing is stay active, stay mentally alert, stay physically fit. Try not to change your routine too much, and be open to something new. Never in a million years did I think I would be where I am at now,
Mm-hmm.
just in the type of work I'm doing. I mean, like I got an undergrad in forensic investigations and a graduate degree in public administration. I don't know if I use them very much, right? But
Mm-hmm.
but leading and managing is what our forte is in the military, specifically in our regiment. I don't think many people do it as well as we do it, from our squad leaders and platoon leaders and our field grade officers that have the the depth and breadth and the amount of responsibility that our folks have, right? And again, not that our other branches don't, they do, but I'm a little partial, right? So stay active, stay physically fit, stay motivated, um, continue being who you are, and don't let 1 or 2 or 8 or 20
Mm-hmm.
rejection notices get you down. It has nothing to do with you. You just might not be the right fit for what they're looking for. That's all.
Hey, Mike, outstanding, outstanding. Do we have any other questions from any other panel members to ask Mike? All right, we got about 3 minutes left. Real quick, we have some resources here. We'll make sure we send these slides out to you as well, or you can have a copy of the actual slides, and you have some links on here as well that you can log on if you have any questions about any of the resources that are provided in the slides. Mr. True, you have anything you want to add?
No, no, thanks, Gerald. I just logged back in just as we're getting ready to close. Thank you, though.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, Mike, the last point on your slides, I think this was fantastic. I think too is that I wish I would have got this slide briefing and presentation that you presented when I retired from the military. Because it would have made me a lot more comfortable. In my job, and I know, like you said, you can your first job probably not going to be your last job. You said you had three different jobs, and you finally found your dream job. So that's a good point to people to remember that, sometimes you got to take what's out there and then you can get to where you want to be later. So that was a good example. And I think your mental health slide, milestone slide was fantastic because we all deal with that when we retire from the military. When you go from 100 miles per hour to now you're going to 30 until you find a job back up to 100, that can cause some problems. And that 2.5%, that's a true stat as well. So you really knocked it out the park tonight and really gave us really what we needed. And I know these slides, I know we had a few people on here tonight, but it's a slide that people can go ahead and pull, and we can send those to the MPRA members as well. But Mike, I would tell you this was fantastic. And hearing you speak tonight and the passion you spoke and the lesson that was shared to this group was outstanding. So thanks again, Mike, for coming in and being an old retiree coming in, giving people stuff that they need to hear tonight. So on behalf of us, I want to say thank you, and thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it. Appreciate the opportunity, brother. Good
All
seeing
right.
everybody.
Yeah, good. Thank you. And Mike, I can go and give it over to you. I think before we introduce the next, I don't know whether Miss Trotman on tonight, but if you want to go ahead and talk about the next presentation.
Well, real quick, there was a question.
Mhm.
When should I get term life insurance? Will it be impacted after my VA rating? Understand there's two competing um, uh, goals in mind when you start shopping for life insurance. I was once a benefit consultant. I'm not in that line of work anymore, but I will tell you this. When you're going through the process to get your VA disability rating, the things that you discuss with those who are evaluating all those things in your medical records are different than those things you would be discussing as you go through your life insurance. A lot of folks just don't understand those things that you get while in the military, those things that would add up to your total disability rating. So the answer to that question is very complicated, but simply stated, work through any of those life benefit solutions before you begin the process for your VA disability rating, because those are competing requirements. And if you get a policy prior to that rating, most civilian organizations that have life solutions, it's a rate that is locked in once you are approved for that policy. So it's important to get all those things taken care of before you begin that journey to get what you're entitled to with your disability rating. I hope that answers the question.
Mhm. Yeah, it did. Thanks, Mike.
Well, and transitioning now, some of you may know our featured speaker for the next mentor session that we have. Uh, she's a well-known author who provides great guidance for those seeking employment within the government workforce, regardless of what agency. She has written several uh, self-help kinds of publications for people, and as a result of changes recently in USA Jobs, she has had to step back and rewrite how to prepare a federal resume with the two-page guidelines that government agencies have been told this is the way we're going to do business going forward. So we've negotiated a time for her and have invested some of our funding within the MPRA, and she's agreed to step up and help us with with our webinar in January. We would appreciate a widespread, um, get with your friends and colleagues, and even if there are people out there who are already transitioned, that uh, I look forward to seeing this two-page federal resume uh, seminar that she's planning to provide for us, and I think it'll be very beneficial whether you're transitioning, have already transitioned, and maybe looking for your next career, especially if it has to do with federal employment. Um, that's as good as I can get right now, Gerald.
All right. Thanks, Mike. I appreciate you. Thanks again. We can go to the next slide, please. And Beth, are you on, Beth?
I am.
All right, Beth, you can take the next couple of slides on the MPRA membership.
Well, one, I want to thank everybody for joining us this evening and taking some time in order to learn more about this, not only our webinar program, but listening to what MEG's had to offer in regards to the selective service system. Hopefully, you'll continue to share this opportunity with your networks as we continue on with these. These are on a quarterly basis. So our next one, as Mike previously mentioned, it'll be in January with Ms. Troutman. For those of you who may not be members, my question would be why not? The association's constantly doing things in order to improve not only our membership, but improve our programs. And that's where we could use your help, because some of the funding that comes in from memberships is going back towards these programs. And then the last slide that we have is, again, this is the benefits of being a member. So whether it's a corporate membership, friends and family membership, standard membership, the difference between them: standard is for those who have a background with law enforcement, friends and family for those who do not, and corporate, as it is with the corporate industry. But the benefits, being a part of it, and being a part of something bigger than just you. You already chose at one point in time to be a part of something bigger than just you to begin with. Why not continue that? And also builds into what Migs had mentioned multiple times, is networking. The connectability, because the MP Corps is small, unfortunately getting smaller, but everybody's connected to somebody. And that might be able to be helpful towards furthering whatever your next chapter will be. And that's all that I have.
All right. Well, thanks again. I really appreciate everybody taking time out of their busy schedule tonight to jump on. But again, these slides will be sent out, and also we'll be upload this presentation to the actual MPRA website for people to go on and look at them later. So again, I'm very, very happy with the presentation tonight. And Mike, you knocked it out of the park, brother. Thanks again.
Appreciate the opportunity, man. Good to see everyone.
Yeah, good to see you. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone. Y'all take care.
All right. Thank you.